Hello, this is Alexa, and you are listening to the Wishbeads podcast. I have an incredibly special guest who is near and dear to my heart. He is Bob LaPorta, who also happens to be my father in law. And, he has such an interesting story and to tell. He and I have collaborated on a number of things, which you're going to hear all about. But I also think that this month, with Father's Day just a handful of weeks away, I've really been thinking about the men in my life, whether they're friends or family members, and just also there's been a little bit of a theme unintentionally that last month I highlighted the amazing Sparky Bridges, and who is a woman on a mission, and she is 80 years old. My father-in-law, as you'll hear, is in his 80s as well, and they're still going strong. And when I recognize the challenges and I hear the atrocities that are happening in the world, of course it hits me like a gut punch. It is mind-boggling to me how much work we need to do to really rise as humans and live in our capacity of love and compassion and kindness. And yet when I look at these individuals, our 80-year-old, amazing wise ones among us, I want to share those stories to give us all hope and faith and joy, to anchor ourselves in what's possible and break free from the concepts of we are too old to fill in the blank. And because it's, learning, growing, creating, it's a never ending journey. So what an honor to be able to share with you, Bob LaPorta's story, his journey as a creator, to even our latest creation with something that you're going to hear about shortly. So thanks for tuning in. Stay strong, stay positive. We've got a lot of work to do as a human race, but we're in it together. So without further ado, maybe you'll be inspired by Bob's story. I certainly am. Here he is. Thank you so much, Papa, for doing my podcast. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
It's my first podcast with you.
Well, we've got quite a story to tell, and there's a few different chapters. But one thing that I want to share with you is that I have known you now for, I've known you now for about 30 years.
No.
30 years, which is just incredible. But I will tell you something that I was taken with from the first time I met you was your creativity, that you've lived a phenomenally creative life. That may come as a surprise to you, but you're someone who has always appreciated the arts and has supported the arts and creativity in various ways. There's a few highlights that I wanted to jump to, but can you talk first about your love of the theater? We shared that in common from the very beginning. What's your journey been like? Just going back to your love of theater.
Well, I was sitting in class one day in freshman year in high school, and the teacher said to me, "You're going to be in our play." I said, "What?" Yes, we have a competition, the freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, and you're cast in the lead of Windy Comes to the Diamond O. Whatever that was, I had never heard of it. The only play I had ever written was probably read was Merchant of Venice in freshman year. The Jesuits made us read that. So I was unfamiliar with it, but I did the rehearsal. My mother made a lovely jacket for me, a suede jacket with fringe, because I was this dude guy who showed up at a ranch and kind of changed their whole approach to everyday life. So they were going to vote for Best Actor, and my mother and sister are in the audience, and they come out and they say, "Bob LaPorta is the Best Actor." What? Freshman year, I'm up against seniors, and so I win. And we go home and my mother opens the door and walks in and says to my father, we have another actor in the family. Because my father was an Italian actor in my hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania. And he appeared in the lead roles of most of the Italian productions, which were huge, incredible sets. And as a matter of fact, one time my mother took her father to a play that my father was in. I think it was before they were married. And my grandfather said to his daughter, my mother, oh, that can't be your friend. This guy must be from New York as a hired actor. So he was a prominent actor. So I followed. In my senior year, I was cast as the stage manager in our town. And I talked to my teacher at that time about going to Carnegie Tech, Pittsburgh. And she said, oh, you'll never get in there. So I dropped it. I just dropped it. But this teacher who directed our town brought the cast to New York to the Winter Garden Theater one Saturday afternoon. And I saw West Side Story with Larry Kurt and Carol Lawrence and Mickey Callan. And here's an 18-year-old kid overwhelmed by what he saw and what he felt. And I said, that's it. I want to do this more. And I read every play I could possibly have. Our Scranton Library had anthologies. And, Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, and I read them all. It took me about 2 hours to read what I used to, instead of doing homework, I think. So LAP dissolved to performing in community theaters and in college. And that's where I met your mother-in-law at college in a play. And she was at the women's college. I was at the men's college. So that was my love of theater, acting. And I then subsequently auditioned at Carnegie Tech and I was accepted, and that's where my degree is from. But it's in directing, not in acting. Heck, when I went there and I saw the people who were acting there, this Karen Gorney, who was in Saturday Night Fever, Robert Foxworth, Bruce Weitz from LA Law, or no, that's Michael Cooper, a whole host of actors. I said, wow, I think I better turn to directing. So that's what, but my career is actually in television, not in theater.
Yeah. So you graduate Carnegie Tech, and then you do transition to television. Do you want to share a bit about what that journey was like for you?
All my contemporaries, graduate friends were getting jobs in residential theaters, the Guthrie and you name them, all over America. And I was sending out resumes, but one day in theater management class, I had a substitute teacher who was in television. He was a salesman for commercial time at KDKA in Pittsburgh. And I went up to him and I said, how do you get into television? And he said, well, Group W Westinghouse, which owned KDKA and 4 other television stations in Boston, Baltimore, and Philadelphia, and San Francisco, they had a training program. And I applied for that and was accepted. So they took me in right after graduation. I didn't have to change cities. I went from Schenley Park, where Carnegie Tech is, to downtown. And I was a producer director at KDKA. After a year there, they said to me, you're not going to be able to progress here. You've done everything you can. We want to send you to one of our talk shows that we are producing, the Merv Griffin Show in New York or the Mike Douglas Show in Philadelphia. I want you to interview with both producers, and whoever wants you, you will go there. So I interviewed with Merv, and he was delightful, and his producer was warm and interviewed me, but I really hit it off, believe it or not, with Roger Ailes, who was the producer of the Mike Douglas Show, and he hired me. So before he left to go with Nixon, I worked with him for a year, from August of 67 to the Republican convention. I think it was in Miami in 1968. And you know what happened at the Democratic convention in
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
So he left and I stayed for 4 more years and rose to produce most of the co-hosts. I would say 45 out of the 50 I handled. So I learned to interview there, and I learned to, and I know this is what you are interested in, visualizing how a segment would go, how the week would go. What's going to happen in this segment for 12 minutes with this celebrity? And I got to the point where I could create the feeling for that segment. I could go into Mike and brief him. We wrote all his questions, by the way. He read them off cue cards. I could tell him not only what we were going to talk about, but I would give him an attitude about the guest. I would say, this guy is really important in this field. And you got to really, and he'd say, okay, Bob, I'll listen. And he used to say to me sometimes after I would show him the introduction and the questions, you make me really look smart, Bobby, you know, and that made him happy. So that's not theater, but in a sense it is. It is theater.
Yeah, it is theater.
It's a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah.
I created conversations. I created reality.
Yeah. And there's sensitivity to character, and there's sensitivity to objectives. And I think that great acting and be able to break down a scene or break down a play and the arc of the story is there's the sort of intellectual approach to it and then intuitive approach to it. But I also find that you're someone, I believe, because of your theater training and probably naturally who you are, that you're very sensitive to people, to how they feel, to reading their energy and being able to connect with someone. And I've watched you in other areas of your career be able to interview people and create that trust that then allows them to open up and really share who they are with ease. And that is a very sensitive job. And I think that one of the reasons that I have benefited from my own theater training is that it helps me teach people how to be more comfortable in their own skin, how to have an objective, know what you want to say, know how you want to make other people feel. Yeah. And that's why I think there's another reason why you and I have connected, even professionally, not just personally.
Yes. Well, there's one story that came to me recently on the Douglas show. At one point, Mike had to leave the show for 2 days to attend his brother's funeral in Chicago. And Sammy Davis stepped in and handled the chore of the host. When he came back, he talked about the service for his brother and how much respect he had in his small community. There was almost a longing of Mike for wanting what his brother had achieved in his life. And there was a quote that was read at the funeral that Mike had and read and was very touched by. Now, lap dissolved 2 years later, okay? We bring his mother and father on the show to celebrate an anniversary with his wife. So Jen, his wife, was there, and Mr. and Mrs. Dowd. That's Mike's real name, Michael Dowd from Chicago. So he's interviewing his parents, and we go to commercial, and he looks over at me, and I'm standing by the monitor, and he signals me to come over to him. And he said, Bob, do you remember that quote from my brother's funeral? And I said, yes, I do. And I pulled it out of my pocket and gave it to him. Now, we didn't plan that. He didn't know I had it, but I just anticipated the possibility of that meaning something in this segment with his parents. So that is a story I like to tell now. I've only told it 2 times, to you and somebody else recently. I guess how really connected I was to moments between people that we could capture on camera.
Mm.
And I remember, well, there are many other instances. I won't go into them.
Yeah. I just think it's a beautiful trait that serves life both in personal relationships, professional relationships, and is something that you can't necessarily teach, but you can model. And I think that you've done that, very, very beautifully throughout the different chapters of your career. And then, of course, the Mike Douglas show gave you the opportunity that took you to San Diego. You fell in love with the city. You found an opportunity there to work for SeaWorld in the entertainment division. And, what was that transition like for you?
Well, I wanted to live in San Diego for sure. We had come out and we did a week here, and it was February, and we lived in New Jersey, and the show was in Philadelphia. I was so impressed with the weather, the air, the greenery, the people, the whole thing. So I went home and I said, Esther, we're moving to San Diego. And she said, wait a minute, I don't know anybody there. I have a life here. The kids were small. Your husband was only about 5 or 4, and Richard was 3 and Carolyn was 6 or something, and we moved. Now, when I first came, I said to people, I didn't know how to do a memo. I was never in a business situation, and this was run like a business. We wore ties, and we wrote memos and had lots of meetings. And I said, well, I'm producing shows for characters who can eat the set. So, and that happened. Shamu occasionally went a little too close to the set with his tail and knocked it over. But it was very gratifying, especially when we took SeaWorld to Cleveland, Ohio, and Orlando, Florida, because we brought our technology and our know-how all those miles and introduced young children to dolphins that they could touch, starfish they could pick up, and very little was known about the killer whale and dolphins. The killer whale being the second smartest, well, third after people, rhesus monkeys, and then the killer whale, intellect. Alexa, it's not going to be good to continue on SeaWorld because it ended so sadly. What happened to SeaWorld by some well-meaning people who felt the animals weren't in the best of situations. But I can attest to you the care that they got and what we learned from them scientifically. The trainers trained them to roll out roll out their turnover and give them a urine sample. And they had intense work on killer whales and their futures and the births we had. And the documentary that did a great disservice to SeaWorld was not altogether true.
Yeah.
So
and it's tough because we live in this society right now where people are very, very, very quick to judge. And it is, opinions can get viral very quickly, and they can be founded not necessarily on fact. And I think that was actually one of the first documentaries that really created quite an unraveling without people being prepared for a response.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a sign of the times. It was a forecast for the times, certainly that we're in right now.
Well put. So I left SeaWorld and ironically did several television specials for them. One with Mayim Bialik, who's the host of Jeopardy now. Mm. She was only about 12.
Oh my gosh.
We wanted to do it, and we created, and again, this was a vision I had. I said, when is this going to air? And they said, near Mother's Day. I said, oh, why don't we have a Mother's Day gift to Mother Earth? And I got my friend Tom Azari, the art director from Seinfeld, and he designed a set with the biggest greeting card ever made. And it was on the set of City Streets. And, you know, the whale was 20 foot high. It was the centerpiece of the backdrop. And we went around to all the Busch parks at that time. It was owned by Busch Gardens. And we did a segment from each, a responsible segment of ecological balance and food chain and all of that. And that aired on Nickelodeon and ABC. So I was associated with SeaWorld, you know, for a long time.
Beautiful. Well, I want to fast forward a little bit because the creativity that I've seen in you and the curiosity that I've seen in you has taken a few different forms, but a true highlight is when you decided, I know there was one moment you got extremely energized about writing a play. I don't, you know, remember when you just decided that's it. You had sort of, I would say not fully retired from, you know, doing your work, but you were in, I would call it semi-retirement perhaps. And you decided to take it upon yourself to, you know, you had a story to tell. And so tell me a little bit about that play, the inspiration and what inspired you to get started, roll up your sleeves and start writing.
Well, after I started my company, LaPorta and Company, during which I had an operation, I was working out of home, and I said to Esther, I don't need this office. I don't need all these people. They want me, and I can work from home with my computer. So I got a little office downtown, a little executive suite, one room, and I was noodling through my head, I guess, my leaving SeaWorld. It was voluntary. It wasn't ugly or anything, but there were a lot of unsettled issues there. And I think it was cathartic to write this play.
Yeah.
It dealt with an executive, an advertising executive, who has a flood in his basement. And a flood, to one of my favorite authors, Joseph Campbell, is a new beginning, is a cleansing of it's a metaphor for that, often used in literature. So he has this flood in his basement, and a lot of materials are from his presentation he's going to make as an individual, not from his existing advertising agency. He left there in bad fashion. So he's on his own. He comes up with a campaign, and it gets destroyed. And he's got to rebuild it over a weekend before his appointment. But along the way, what also is wet and almost destroyed is his toy train collection. And that meant a great deal to him. It was his youth. It was his time as a little boy, as I was given for Christmas, my first train set. And I would turn all the lights off in the room except the Christmas tree and run the trains and watch them come around with their lights on. And it was the calmest, most peaceful time for me. And this man, in the middle of turmoil, couldn't get that feeling again that he had as a little boy. And his daughter and his sister bring it out of him through the course of the play. So I managed to type it out and get it done. I submitted it to 30 theaters and got 30 rejections.
It was a great play. It still is a great play.
My feeling was nobody cares about this guy. I understand that, you know, there are incredibly pressing issues that the theater is dealing with today. Immigration, gay rights. They're not interested in an advertising executive who's trying to rebuild his life, which really happens in life. Then I handed it to an enterprising young senior at Yale University who reads it while she's a hat check girl.
Well, yeah, technically speaking, I was a coat check girl because not too many people check their hats, but it was the same concept.
Okay, okay. And it happened to be you. And you gave me some of the greatest notes on it, one of which was your main character is too nice. You know, so I spiced him up a little bit. And in the final version, I clarified some things with other friends who gave me great advice. One from college, a college classmate of Esther's, Irene Walsh, who is a PhD in drama and taught drama. And she helped me with certain scenes. A good friend of mine, Mike McLean, helped me a great deal with scenes through emails back and forth.
Yeah.
It's been sitting in my computer for probably 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. I think about going back to it, but I'm very busy.
You
right?
are so busy, and we're going to get to all that busy. One fun moment I just want to highlight is that, so because I just love that you take risks, you create things, I mean, nobody that I know, certainly at their stage in their life, is like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a play. And then you sit down and you actually do it. And then you don't just do it for yourself or for your family or just as a creative endeavor per se. You put it out there. You like sent it out to places, which is fantastic. When I was, so yes, on the weekends to make money, I was a coat check girl at a very popular restaurant in Chicago, and I worked for tips. And when I was working on your play, I was very focused. And so I was working on this play, and I was working and making notes. And I actually had a couple come up to me as they were getting their coat back. And they said, "We have been watching you work so hard this whole time, and we made bets as to what you're working on." And I said, "You're not going to guess what I'm working on." And then I told them, and they were like, "Ah," and I think they gave me a big tip. But I love that. I love that about you. And I also love that it's still there. It's like the timelessness of it. Like, you very well may send it to a festival or a graduate program, or submit it to Carnegie Tech and let their graduate directing program have at it. It's a great story.
Alexa,
Yeah.
Alexa, I carry a little medal around with me. I think Thomas already gave it to me, and it says one word on it: courage. That's at the core of everything. There are people I think everybody has a creative bent. I mean,
I agree.
If they create an accounting spreadsheet, or if they make something in ceramics, but it takes courage to believe in it, to believe in yourself.
Yes.
And I'm not afraid to fail. And I think maybe I failed once and I got over it. I don't know what it is, but that's the key element to people, to take on things they only dream of, to do it. So,
and to be curious enough that if someone is sitting, listening or watching, and they're like, "But I don't even know what to do," just start with curiosity. I know a woman who's going through some profound grief and has found peace, a little slice of peace, through just painting and making things. And it's helping her in some way process. And I think because the culture has trained us to be so goal-oriented and finish projects and like the deliverables and trying to produce for some sort of gain at the other side, that we lose the joy of the creation itself. Because yes, it takes courage to even take the ceramics class, or to make a meal, from scratch, or to decide that you want to build something, create something, put your energy somewhere. And it's so easy to just say, it's not worth it, and sit on the couch and watch Netflix. So
there was Esther told me about a man who came to speak motivationally to her department where she was working at the university. And he said, I go into schools, he's an artist. I go into schools, and in the second grade, I say, how many artists are here? 90% raise their hand.
Yeah.
He goes to fourth grade. How many artists? 50% raise their hand. He goes to seventh grade. How many are artists? And 3 people raise their hand. because they might do something and someone said, well, that doesn't look like
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And they give it
And
up. They
yeah.
give it up.
Yeah. Or that's not valued. It's not valued, or they're, it's not their thing. And we label ourselves and put ourselves in these little imaginary boxes. But I still contend that yes, there's courage there. There's curiosity there. There's compassion there, because I find that there's from my observation, the work that you do, there's always a human story behind it. You didn't say yes to every job that came across your desk just for the sake of a paycheck. You had to find meaning in the professional work, in the personal work, in the creative work that always struck me as very human based. And I want to share now the story of our latest collaboration, or maybe our biggest collaboration to date, which had to do, you've got your baseball jersey on, woo woo. You've always had a fascination with numbers and lists and charts and things like that. And then of course, what happened as you became, well, you have many grandchildren, but specifically with my youngest son and his love of baseball. Let's fast forward and talk about what inspired you for this latest creative endeavor.
Well, this is the ultimate chart. Okay.
Right.
I revere this chart.
Can you say, for those people who are just listening, what are you holding up there?
I am holding up a baseball scorecard. When you used to go to baseball games, there was a man holding about 50 of these. He'd say, get your scorecard, 25 cents, and you got a pencil with it. And you went into the game and you kept score. And the announcers over would say, okay, here's the lineup. And he'd give the lineup of the 9 players. So I was using this when this little guy came up.
Oh, there's my peanut when he was young.
And he was playing for the Pirates, which was my favorite team before the Padres. And he was playing with his brother. And I was keeping score at the game. And it was around the time that your husband, Elio and Ian's father, said to me, there's a great documentary out on baseball cards. This is Roberto Clemente's card. And the documentary is essentially saying that baseball card shows are going the way of the hula hoop. I mean, they're just not popular anymore because one of the producers of the baseball cards overproduced a rookie card and it lost its value.
Yeah.
That stuck with me. Yeah. So I was driving home. I was thinking of me and my friend Puggy in Pennsylvania, in Scranton. We used to get our baseball cards and lay them down on the floor and put them in the positions that they actually played. Like Mickey Mantle would be in center field, Yogi Berra behind the plate, and I'd play the Yankees and he'd play the Phillies. And we grabbed our Monopoly dice, our 2 Monopoly dice, and we just assigned a value to each one. If I rolled a 2, it was a double. I rolled a 3, it was a triple, etc. Very rudimentary, very crude. But we had fun with it. So I'm driving home and I'm thinking, and I get home and yes, I make a list of all the possibilities that 2 dice can come up with. Wow, that's 11. There are 11 numbers from 2 to 12. Oh, but wait a minute, that's not enough. There are more things that happen in baseball. So I added another die, a different color, a single red die, and that goes from 1 to 6. So when you roll 3 die, you get a number on the whites and you get a number on the red. So now you have 11 times 6. You have 66 possibility. Now we're talking. I'm thinking I could do a game like I used to play with Puggy, but now I have 66 possibilities of an at-bat. A lot of things happen at bat. So I said, I got greedy. And I said, wait a minute. The top three batters are different potential than the middle three batters in a batting order and the bottom three. So now I added 3 columns to my chart. I guess I could show that chart as it ultimately came out. And now I have something, 198 possibilities. So,
that, that actually mimic the possibilities that happen in an actual baseball game. So suddenly you've got a dice game that can actually mimic the real thing, the same action, the same excitement, the same unknowing of what's going to happen, what's happening with the players on the field.
right.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was playing with a neighbor very early on. I played the game hundreds of times by myself. It can be solitaire too. You can play both teams. So, and the funny thing is, I kept timing myself and it was under 40 minutes. I said, wow, that's very appealing. Because Monopoly games can go on for 4 hours.
I know.
So 39 minutes, how about 3-9 baseball? And your son gave this to me too.
Oh, cool.
So 3s and 9s have a lot of things happening in baseball. 3 outs, 3 bases, 9 players, 9 innings. So that's how that came about. So I had very crude versions and I took it with me when we went to a wedding in New Jersey.
Well, yeah, you had crude versions, but crude in a sense. You had the concept itself. The genius of the game lies in what you created on paper with 3 dice. Right. That is sort of the most exciting and valuable aspect of what you created, for sure. Amazing. Yeah.
So we're driving with you and your husband, my wife, your mother-in-law, and the 4 of us from New Jersey to New York. And you said, can we have a rest stop? And Robert pulled over and you came out of the restaurant and you said, Papa, I want you to come with me tomorrow at a meeting I'm having at Uncommon Goods to present some of my Wishbeads. I said, what? Yes, I have an appointment and I want you to come with me. We made that appointment, you did your business, and then you said, my father-in-law here is here for a reason. And I explained the game, basically showed them some things, prototypes I had, and they said, we want it. And that was the birth of this thing actually coming to pass.
Yeah.
And you're in so many steps of this.
Yeah.
It's appropriate that I'm here with you today, I guess.
Well, it was such fun. It was such a fun 24 hours, because to elaborate on that little moment, you and I had plenty of conversations prior to the wedding about what to do with this game. And, everything from like, let's create a PDF version and, people can buy it for a couple dollars. And then also about like, well, at that point, obviously I had Wishbeads. I was already, Uncommon Goods has been a phenomenal partner of mine. And I was pitching them at the time, my children's line, which they said yes to. But it was like, what should we do? What should we do? And sometimes in life, and this is really something I want to highlight for everybody listening or watching, a door, like a crack opens in a door where like the possibility, like a new possibility could present itself. And when you go back to this concept of courage, it's one, courage to notice that there's an opportunity presenting itself, and then another bit of courage to actually do something about it. So within that 24-hour period, it dawned on me that, wow, if you came with me and we pitched them, if they had time, because I was meeting with all the big decision makers there, and they said yes, we would already have a buyer, which meant the investment of time and energy to go from an intangible product to a tangible product made sense. Because I'm not just a wisher that has a head in her clouds and is totally disconnected from reality. I'm a wisher that has one foot in reality and one foot in the clouds, meaning I like to always back up my projects with some kind of tangible goal or outcome or opportunity. In that 24 hours after you dropped us off at our hotel, we were staying in two different places. We ran around the city and tried to develop a prototype in like 5 hours. Like we knew we wanted it to be a canvas bag. So I got the right canvas bag. I got a pencil. I got a such and such. We went around to fabric stores. I picked out that fabric. We had all these component parts so that when we went to this meeting, we didn't just tell them about the game. We showed them something that we literally had made up with like a handful of hours. And when they said yes, you and I finished our meeting like two professionals. And do you remember we stepped in that elevator, leaving their offices in Brooklyn, and the two of us looked at each other, and that was literally the most fun moment ever. It was so fun. It was the most fun to just be like, oh my goodness. Like
Everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves that feeling once
definitely
in their life. And you know, another thing that Joseph Campbell talks about, the creator, not the creator, but the man who followed myths in America and the world. He says, when you follow your bliss, there are helping hands always along the way. And certainly you are my greatest helping hand. Then your husband, our son, comes up with a magnificent graphic look
totally gorgeous.
that everybody says should be entered for awards, graphic awards.
Graphic design awards, absolutely.
They look at it and they say, wow. And then there's a field itself that is quite unique.
Yeah, so for people who are watching, definitely head over to 3-9games.com, gamesplural.com. You can also check out Uncommon Goods and just search for 39 Games. And essentially you have a oiled wax canvas bag with a brass zipper with a stitched emblem. You have a game board, directions, dice, a cool branded pencil, a notepad that has easy scoring, not the full baseball scorecard, although you can download one, but just a real simple notepad. And essentially it's like a cool canvas game that you can play at a coffee shop. You can play it a solitaire. You play it with friends over Zoom. There's so many different ways to play, and the reviews are unbelievable. But let's just say, like, let's fast forward to a few days ago, or was it yesterday? I don't even remember. The news in San Diego came to highlight you, because do you mind sharing, Papa, what your age?
No, well, how old am I? I'm 81.
81 people. 81. So when you think about phases in your life where you're like, I'm going to create something, I'm going to do something, I'm going to go over them, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a thing, I'm going to, we have this nonsense concept that age or that time of my life is over. And then we fall into like what everybody else is doing. But you're a creator, you're a creative person. This is what brings you bliss. And it's a challenge, and it keeps you young, and it keeps you engaged. And the freaking news came to do a story on you and a story about the game. So it's evolving. It's evolving. And partly what I also love about this, and it goes back to the human nature of this creation, is that it brings people together in a real way. I
have had people say to me, why don't you do an app of this?
Yeah.
I said, no, I don't want to do an app. I have seen Elio's baseball game on his monitor. It is unbelievably accurate and real.
Oh, MLB The Show, like the big.
The game he plays in his bedroom, right?
That's the one. Yes, I think it's called MLB The Show. Yeah, it's a video game.
He's sitting there by himself with a controller.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested. Well, if they do go to the website, they'll see me playing Elio in a game, on a video.
Yeah.
And the interaction. I remember Monopoly games when I was a kid on the porch every morning, not just Sunday, playing for hours. and the interaction of the kids, parents with their children. Well, one of the first letters was from a single mom, wasn't it, Alexa? And she
Oh, I
said,
don't think she's a single mom, but she was a mom who could not believe how much fun she was having with her son playing this game. I mean,
yeah,
they're people that we know, so I know that that was one of the reviews. And without prompting, she wrote a review that was fabulous for the game. And it's that connection. Like, I love playing with the boys. We did a tournament in your building not too long ago, and all the people, like, playing together, and the camaraderie. And I love that part of our plan is to bring it to retirement communities
yeah.
and get tournaments and games going there. We have a friend of ours who runs fundraisers for vets in bars. And we're
Wow,
like, oh my God, he's like, this would be amazing to help
perfect.
raise money for people and bring people together. It's just the coolest.
By the way, that a video of that event that we held where we had 10 tables, 20 people playing,
Yeah.
will soon be on our website.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we'll try to do a clip as well too. I'll definitely post that on social, but I'm so proud of you. I really, really am. I think there was one time, and maybe we'll wrap it up, after this, but that you had mentioned that, as you age, and I'm paraphrasing, but you talk about, feeling a little bit irrelevant. Was that the word that you used? Sometimes
Invisible.
invisible,
Invisible.
excuse me, invisible. That's right. And I can see in a culture that is obsessed with youth, it can feel like that is a natural place to go to. However, you are you may feel that upon occasion, and yet the courage that you have to keep creating with meaning, making your legacy, making an impact in people's lives, people that you will likely not meet. And I love that. And I feel honored to help you with that in any way that I can.
Well, I couldn't do it without you and your husband and my wife, because, Alexa, there are 4 more games that are
I know.
already designed and developed.
I know. We'll
I
save that for the next podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I happen to love my football game.
I know.
I played it with my friend in Orlando on YouTube and whatever we're on, Zoom. And it's the same principle, only applied to another sport.
Yeah. And I'm totally obsessed with the game that's kind of like Yahtzee called Threes and Nines.
Yes,
Oh my God. I love that game so much. So yes, we have more work to do. So stay tuned, people. Stay tuned. More games coming. Oh my
I
goodness.
I hope.
But definitely please check out 3-9games.com, and you can learn all about 3-9 baseball. And I just adore you, Papa, otherwise known as Bob LaPorta, but Papa to me and my kids. And I'm proud of you. And you are the opposite of invisible. You're going to be on television soon.
Wow.
So take that.
I'm very touched by my association and support from my whole family. That's important. And if you don't have that, to your listeners, keep going. There's
Yeah.
you will find support to a good idea, a good execution of something. Fair, honest, decent, always comes through. Always comes
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, it's so true. And to find the joy of the creation itself, even if it's never for a final product, it's just for the creation. That's often, the
That's,
best part.
that's right.
So, yeah, so fun. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. I have just absolutely adored our conversation. I'm
Good.
excited that we're doing this in the month of June. Father's Day is around the corner. It's just a few weekends, and 3-9 baseball makes an amazing gift. But really just, celebrating you and your legacy. It's just awesome.
Thank you, Alexa. It was a pleasure being with you. Even though you talk a little fast, I I get the message from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Say hello to everyone there in Santa Monica.
I will.
Okay? All
Mwah.
right. Bye, sweetheart.
And scene. Woo woo. Oh, okay. All right. Well, there you go. Now we're going to continue the recording because your dad jumped off. Very funny. And I will do the opening now and the closing, so we all have it in one place. Thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoy the Wishbeads podcast, please do me a favor and leave a review, share it with friends, send feedback if you wish, or even if you have a great wish story to tell, email us at hello@wishbeads.com. And of course, you can find links to 39 Baseball in the show notes of this episode. You can also check it out at Uncommon Goods, one of our fabulous partners. And if you want to pick up a copy, pick up a set for yourself, it makes truly hours and hours of meaningful fun. Baseball is for everyone. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being you. Keep the faith, keep wishing, stay positive, have fun, and you were born creative. So go out there and create the life you want and you deserve. Until next time, bye.